Is he going to count us down?
Do you want to do countdown, Josh?
5, 4, 3.
Good morning, everybody. It's been a while since we've seen each other, since July, but it feels a lot longer than that in some respects. And it feels like just yesterday in others. So good morning, Tuesday, September 26th. We have taken attendance. Nancy's taken attendance. We are missing Member Brown today. We're waiting on Member Verhey, but we have quorum, so we're going to proceed with the meeting as scheduled. There wasn't an addendum to the agenda that was circulated, so make sure everybody has that. There's hard copies here at the front if anybody needs the meeting package. And there's Member Verhey now, so he gets to buy the treats for the next meeting since he's the one that's late. If you need the package, they're over here. Just want to take a moment here before we get started. This past Sunday was the Canadian Police and Peace Officers Memorial Service up in Ottawa, and 13 names were added to that list of officers who've died in the line of duty. And of course, we've all heard about the RCMP officer at West, so unfortunate as well to have that loss of life and the disrespect that unfortunately our law enforcement officers are facing these days. So just wanted to send out our thoughts to all of our law enforcement friends to let them know that we have our support. So if there's nothing on the agenda that needs to be added, we've got the addendum in front of you. If there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda, amended agenda. Councillor Pierce and Mayor Bailey, thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. Oops. So this morning we have a declaration of pecuniary interest. Are there any to declare at this time? Seeing none. So this morning we have Mr. Peter Ash, who is the superintendent of one of the superintendent of education with the Grand Erie District School Board. We invited him in today to talk about the review of police and schools report that you've all probably seen by now, and talk about the next steps forward with the PROS program and how we can support that. And as you know, as everybody knows here, we've been very diligent about the school resource officer program suspension and our advocacy in terms of bringing police back into schools. So it's good news to hear that we've got some positive momentum. So we're going to ask Mr. Ash to come up. I believe he has a slide deck, and then we'll have some conversation from there.
See if I got all this right. Thank you very much for having me here. It's an honor to come speak to you, and welcome back to Grand Erie. We are extremely grateful for your support, and we're very happy to have police services back in our schools. In the slide deck, first, it's a very short slide deck. I won't take too much of your time. I'll kind of give you the bullet points. I don't know if you've seen that document or not. It is on Grand Erie's website in a publicly accessible spot under publications. The review of police programs and presence in schools is approximately 8 pages long if you are interested in reading it in its entirety. If, like me, you don't have a lot of time for perusing reports, I will summarize it for you here very quickly. First of all, the review has been completed as of June, and the police are certainly returning back to Grand Erie schools. The program has been renamed the PROS program, which is now trademarked, actually. The Police Resource Outreach Supporting Education. Part of the reason that we came up with that name was that it also clarifies the purpose of the program for people as well. It is about community building, and the name is more reflective of that now. There will be an announcement placed in school newsletters about the return of the PROS officers. If we have names for the officers, then that will also go in the newsletters for the schools. That is part of the next bullet, which was a commitment was made to ensure advanced communication to community when presentations are being scheduled. There were the data was very interesting because the people who were most in support of police officers coming back to the schools were the racialized students who had an opinion, the indigenous students who had an opinion, the 2S LGBTQ plus students who had an opinion one way or the other, actually all supported police officers coming back into the schools. One of the things that the students asked for, they asked for advance notice. So we committed to a letter at the start of the school year that goes out to all the schools that just says that PROS is happening in our schools, so the police will be in our schools, and a notification to go home before presentations to say Officer X will be in X classroom giving a presentation. Part of that, unfortunately, um, and perhaps this group understands this more than a lot of the public do, it reflects our understanding that many of our students, their lived experience has been very traumatic, and they have experiences with violence, and they have experiences with poverty, and they have experiences um, with addiction and mental health issues in their homes. And so their response to trauma um, just means that it's helpful for us to give them advance notice that that's what's coming. And we may have some parents who say, I prefer not to have my student in those presentations, which is kind of what we do for health. But we just give people advance notice. The other thing that the students asked for was they were very happy to have the officers back. They said particularly Mondays and Fridays would be great because that's when there seems to be the most nonsense going on at school. But they also asked, they said, what's important is the right people, the people that can relate to them. They hope to see officers who reflect their identities and officers who get them as kids, who have the right vibe. So, the students were quite supportive. There was some work for us to do because there was also a request. They said, could officers maybe just not wear their sidearms? But we have a job to do at the school boards to explain to students that that's part of the uniform. That is part of the uniform, and there's a requirement for officers to be able to respond to emergencies. We have provided to our police partners some alternative clothing to use if they're coaching at their discretion. So if an officer is coming in and he's helping with coaching wrestling or basketball, or she's helping with wrestling or basketball or whatever, then we have t-shirts and sweatshirts that they can choose to wear if that is to their liking, and it's got PROS across the front. And I think the officers all have theirs now. Is that true? Okay, perfect. So we've got some clothing for them to help to identify themselves and to help them to kind of connect with the students in the schools in a way that suits the officer if they choose. There is also a decision support checklist. This is for the administrator. This is for the administrator of the school, and that is incredibly tiny. It just asks, it makes sure that the administrators in the school have taken care of all the steps that they need to beforehand. This is for the teacher, actually. This one, have I consulted with the administrator? Have I communicated with the parents that there's a presentation? Is the content, the message of the speaker in line with expectations? Those we'll be reviewing all that type of thing as part of the review process. So this is more just making sure that the teacher in the classroom has done what they need to do. Part of that is the content developmentally appropriate to all of my students? There may be students in a class who have cognitive disabilities. So I wouldn't want an officer to walk into a room to give a presentation and find out that there were students within that classroom that weren't going to be able to understand what he was or she was saying. So I think it behooves us to let the officers know about the characteristics of the classroom before they give a presentation so that they have an understanding of what they're walking into and can be prepared for that presentation. The teachers are supposed to be looking at possible triggers for some students, and if specific students have been identified who may be vulnerable. And an example that we have in there is, for example, human trafficking. Another unfortunate reality that we're dealing with now. And considering the timing of the presentation. So perhaps doing a school presentation on a Friday afternoon, if to a grade 6 class where we know that a student may be vulnerable to human trafficking, maybe Friday afternoon is not the best time for us to schedule that, for the teacher to schedule that, because then the student's going home without any sort of support for the weekend. So it's just being mindful of possible impacts and how we can support students. That's really what it is. That is the logo for pros. That's the logo that is on the shirts for and the hood, the sweatshirts for the officers. And that's really the program in a nutshell. I don't know if you have any particular questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ash. I'll start off by thanking you for coming in and doing that. I know I participated in the consultation process, and so did some other folks around the table in terms of advocating for the reintroduction of the program. And I was interested to hear you mentioned some of the biggest proponents of the program are probably from some of the folks that initially the message that we heard was some of those students didn't want police in schools. So to hear that those students actually did want police to come back into schools is validating, I think, of the reasons why police are there for all students, right? Not just certain ones. So that's very encouraging. I guess what I wanted to ask you was in relation, I think it was on your slide, your checklist slide, the commitment to making communications available to the community. Is that dependent on grade? Like I suppose, in my mind, I'm thinking some of the topics in secondary schools are going to be a lot different than road safety topics, for example, in elementary schools. Like, are you notifying parents of every single possible presentation topic, regardless of the grade, or is it based on a certain qualifying criteria?
No, it would be a single notification to the entire school at the start of the year, just saying pros is in the schools this year. Here's some things they might be presenting. The notification, the individual notification, would be that there are officers coming in, and that we would do that each time. And even the road issues, I remember there being a presentation, a famous presentation that would come in and talk about road safety. And I remember having staff members breaking down and crying during the presentation because they had a brother who was lost due to drunk driving. And so just the presentation itself elicited all these emotions. So even with road safety, we would still let people know there's a presentation coming up because we may have some kids who have been, affected by something like that. So, and that's not even about the officer. That's just about kind of the content.
Yeah, just I guess the follow up. Obviously we're not involved in the operational details. That'll be up to Inspector Quenville and her team. But my first thought is to provide flexibility in the program and the school resource officer being available to the different schools. There's some fluidity, like this week doesn't work, next week works better, or whatever. Or can you come back in and talk about this now? Like there needs to be some flexibility still built into the program as well.
The template that we have developed for sending out at the start of the year, and even this might be tweaked slightly about that, because in that letter that went out, I said, depending on the officer's availability, I mean, you could schedule to be there on Thursday and something happens and you just can't be there. right? So that there has to be some flexibility around that. Absolutely, just by the nature of the work.
Thank you. I'm sure there's other questions. Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Through you. Yeah, first of all, thank you. I'm going to say thank you right off the hop. I'm going to follow that with it's about time. But I mean that with all due respect. I know firsthand, my kids are grown now, 26 and 30, but I know firsthand how that school resource forms relationships. And to me, that's the key part, especially with all the age groups in school, is to have that trusted relationship. And I know for fact that we've been extremely lucky here in Brant that there has been tons of relationships made by the officers to students that are still there today. They pass each other on the street, and that's something that's there for life, which is huge. When you made the statement, Grand Area District School Board has work to do. Yes, and then it's interesting because I put down here supporting students, and then further on in your presentation, you made the statement of how we can support students. So I appreciate that statement because absolutely that is, obviously education is one of your mandates, but supporting the students is, in my mind, right there with an education. So I appreciate you saying that. We know that there was other school boards that were doing this review of the officers. Do we know, or do you know, are there any other school boards out there that are still saying we're not going to have it? Or like, was there provincial input into this in the discussions with all the different school boards, and now the review, the review has been completed, the understanding is there of, how important this is and how we can make it work, do the little tweaks. I love the new name as far as I'm concerned, because it's an outreach, so that's perfect. Are there school boards out there that are still not going to resume this program?
I can't speak to them in terms of their process per se. I know for us, there was no provincial intervention or provincial input. I have not heard of any changes within boards that had chosen not to resume the program. That's not to say they haven't or they're not talking about it. I haven't heard of any. We were just glad for our part that we landed where we landed.
100%. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Perhaps just a follow-up then. There was quite a stir for children who wanted to bring in their parents or their guardians who were law enforcement officers for career days, or
Yes.
bring your parent to work or school day type thing. Apart from this program, that's back in
That's
full
fine.
swing.
Yeah.
They can come in uniform into the school for that type of activity as well.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There was an element of misunderstanding in that one with the administrator
Okay.
as well.
I think it just is really important to, especially when people are young, if we want to try and destigmatize this negative relationship that some folks have with law enforcement. This is, as Councillor Pierce noted, it's an ongoing relationship. It's a building block, whether it's elementary school, progressively up to secondary school and beyond. Like, they're our partners in the community, right? So we want to be able to ensure that they're given the respect that they're due as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions for Mr. Asher or comments? Member Verhey?
Just one quick question. It appears that it's a little bit more process driven now, which I'm sure there was good intent around that, but I was always under the impression in the past it was a little bit more fluid between the actual officer and the school that they were going into, and it seemed like it was just it was almost on their plate to have more of a drop-by relationship. Is that, if that is correct, is that still possible for these school resource officers, or is that no longer feasible and it's very much regimented around forms in this policy?
The intent is to try to offer a little bit of a heads up. Whether an officer sometimes drops in or not for a particular reason, there's no hard, fast rules around that. It's more to try to come up with with an opportunity for people to know. I would also say that part of the review ended up being very positive from a few standpoints, and one of them was that the program as it was had not been reviewed for quite some time. And when we got feedback, we also got feedback from officers who felt that in some schools there may have been an expectation for them to assist with discipline, and which they did not. How can you do your job as outreach and then be asked to be a heavy when you're when you're interacting with kids? So it was a good opportunity for us to straighten that out with school staff as well, about what is the role of the officer when they're here. So that was also a good piece, because I think some of the fluidity had caused perhaps a blurring of the role a bit. So this I think was better for officers in some ways too, that way, because it kind of helped to define what their role is.
Inspector Quenneville.
Through you, Madam Chair. Mr. Ash, we're very much looking forward to rekindling that relationship that we've had and making up some of the ground that we lost last year. But I think one other item of note that we should share with the board that I learned from one of your colleagues last week when we met was in the review of the police curriculum that was previously being delivered, that there's no changes anticipated to that curriculum. So,
Yes.
So having said that, the review, if I can paraphrase, basically found that the curriculum was meeting the needs and meeting the restrictions within the school board. So I think that's also important to share with the police service board, and also to say that there were a couple opportunities identified for additional curriculum development, because that curriculum was developed a number of years ago, and certainly society and culture has changed. So there'd be some opportunities to develop some new programming. So in working with our corporate services, that will be something that we'll be looking to undertake, as we, the OPP, are also reviewing our programs as well. So I just wanted to share that, and
Yes,
thank you for meeting last week, and look forward to working with you.
Perfect.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, that's great news to hear that there's opportunities for expanding the program. Mr. Ash, you can obviously tell from the group here that we're very appreciative of the work that was put into it. The consultation process was thorough. We're just thrilled to see the program. We always believed that the School Resource Officer program, and now the PRO's new name, was a good program. We all knew that, and we were hopeful that it was going to be reinstated, fearful maybe for a little bit that it might not be, just for various reasons. But we're thrilled to hear this good news, and looking forward to hearing about how the OPP in the county can grow that program and get back into doing some of the things they really like doing. So thank you for coming today. If we look forward to keeping that dialogue open. If there's anything you need from us, please don't hesitate to let us know as well. We want to, Councillor Pierce, the thought came through.
Thank you. Something just came to mind here. I'm just wondering, Mr. Ash, if you'd be willing to, let's say, a year from now, to come back and visit us, just to say, you know what, here's an update on how it's going, because we get the updates from the OPP and stuff like that, and again, we know the resources, but I'm curious if it'd be possible for you to come back, 6-8 months, a year from now, just to say, hey, you know what, this is how it's going. We've learned this, now we're going down this direction, just to kind of keep the dialogue from both sides. I'm wondering if you'd be willing for that.
Absolutely. In fact, part of the plan is an annual review.
Perfect.
Instead of waiting and making it a larger issue.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, on that note, thank you very much for coming in. We really appreciate it. If there's anything we can do in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out. I know you'll be working with the OPP team on that bringing those officers back in. So yeah, if there's anything that you think we can help with the Police Service Board for advocacy or communications, please don't hesitate to let us know.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So at this time, we'll have a motion to receive Mr. Ash's presentation for information. Mayor Bailey's put that motion forward. I'll the seconder for that. Councillor Pierce, thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. That was a good presentation. So our minutes from our last meeting on July 18th are in your package. Everybody's had a chance to review them, I am assuming. Any errors or omissions? All right, so we'll have a motion then to approve those minutes from July 18th. Member Verhey, seconded by Mayor Bailey, thank you. All those in favor of that? And that's carried as well. Is there any business arising from the minutes that's not going to be covered at some point today? All right, well, let's move into the detachment commander's report, and we'll turn that over to Inspector Quenville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll get right into my report. So there weren't any staffing changes for this period, which is, as I said, not uncommon during the summer months. We were busy with calls for service and accommodating officers with annual leave selections, so busy time of year, no doubt. One OIPRD complaint during this reporting period. For our community mobilization officer for July, our MCERT worker attended 12 crisis calls during the month, along with 8 additional COAST referrals. Lower just due to the COAST referrals were lower just due to the number of prolific callers, so people that we've already put in contact with services. We had 10 mental health apprehensions in July, and we've been tracking the amount of time spent in the emergency department with the apprehensions. So we spent 38 hours in the emergency department waiting for transition of care. There were 2 referrals to our transitional support worker during July. We are still trending higher for our mental health calls, you see on the graph there, so ahead of the previous 4 years. For August, there were additional 15 mental health resource calls, and the MCERT worker attended 7 crisis calls, 14 COAST referrals for follow-up from the calls. There were, of the 15 mental health calls, 6 resulted in apprehensions, and with a mean time spent of just over 2 hours in the emergency room and just over 28 hours spent waiting for transition of care. And in addition, there were 3 referrals to our transitional support worker. And as for July, we continue to trend upwards for mental health calls. Of note, we've seen an uptick in youth mental health crisis calls here in Brant. They've been some very complex cases where our MCERT worker has been very engaged in finding support for our youth that are challenged with mental health issues. Also of note, there's a new director of service for EDI with Child and Family Services for Grand Erie. So we've initiated discussions with that person to find ways to support youth and new community members from the LGBTQ2S+, BIPOC, and other cultural backgrounds, just to ensure that they get the support while residents of Brant. As mentioned, just with our presentation with Mr. Ash, I attended Grand Erie District School Board meeting last week on September 21st, where they met with a number of administrators from the various schools within the board, and police from Brantford, Haldeman, Norfolk were also in attendance, as well as I had invited someone from corporate services down to hear about the launch of the new PROS program. We have identified a new school resource officer at the Brant detachment. Constable Rawan Aluzi will be taking over that role immediately. So she was also at that meeting with me last week and took that opportunity to meet with representatives from the various schools that she'll be providing service to. For our community services media officer for July and August, The number of news releases and social media posts is up from previous months, and despite it being summer and annual leave and lots of other things, some of you may have noticed Constable Buchert has been supporting Constable Vitalis in that work, and there's been a lot of really positive social media posts depicting our officers engaged in the community, and I've certainly noticed the amount of interaction on those posts from the citizens, so it's a good news story of the amount of engagement that's happened over the summer months. We do have a number of focus patrols that have been ongoing both July and August. We remain engaged in the downtown in Paris, and there's been a number of other traffic-related focus patrols that are ongoing. Our traffic management unit continues to provide enforcement throughout the county. Year to date, we're up to just over 2,300 charges, which certainly means we've initiated traffic stops with a number of citizens traveling through Brant County, although we continue to deliver the message about road safety. Speeding continues to be a challenge. In July and August, we had a significantly higher number of Crime Stoppers tips than we usually do, so we're just at 84 year to date. I am meeting along with the Chief of Six Nations and the Chief of Brantford Police with the Executive Director, Mr. Hart, with Crime Stoppers in the coming month to just talk about how we can bolster their impact within the county and on Six Nations. So discussions are underway about how we can continue to work together with that. In terms of our noteworthy events, without going through them all, there's a few themes that I just want to draw your attention to. There's been a lot of proactive work in both July and August, whether it's triggered by our ALPR, our Automatic License Plate Reader System, which is installed in all of our cruisers, ride, and just general patrols throughout the county. Impaireds continue to be a concern in Brant County. There's a number of them noted for you in both July and August. On July 12th, officers from our detachment partnered with Brantford Police to conduct a commercial motor vehicle safety blitz as part of the Safe Driver Traffic Initiative. So we continue to not only conduct enforcement and education with the traditional motor vehicle, but our commercial motor vehicles traveling throughout the county, because we know certainly any collisions or challenges with commercial motor vehicles can be catastrophic. So we will remain committed to commercial motor vehicle safety blitzes. We did have two fatal collisions during this reporting period. In July, on the 22nd, we had a crossover incident on the 403 highway, and with two vehicles involved and one person deceased. That investigation's ongoing. And the second fatal collision was on August 7th. It was a single ATV collision in the Burford area, where the 18-year-old succumbed to his injuries in hospital. No other vehicles were involved in that collision. A good news story from August 2nd. We were advised of a number of catalytic converter thefts from Bluebird bus lines. Shortly thereafter, that day, actually, we had information about that, and our Community Street Crimes Unit became engaged, and the $80,000 in stolen catalytic converters was subsequently retrieved, and charges were laid. So certainly a testament to the partnership between our frontline and our Community Street Crimes Unit, and how quickly they were able to get hop into action and take enforcement action there too. As I mentioned, our impaired occurrences are still up. For July, showed a 40% increase and a 14% increase for August. So we remain committed to conducting our ride enforcement and certainly proactive patrols responding to impaired operators. In terms of our trends and actions for July and August, violent crime was up just over 8%, just under 9% compared to 2022, and up 27.4% year to date. In terms of the sexual assaults, it does show an increase of 75%. So anticipating further inquiries, I had our analyst do some additional workup on the sexual assaults for that reporting period. And I can tell you that 2 of the occurrences involved a youth and who's subsequently been identified and is facing charges. One of them was historical in nature. Another occurrence involved a sextortion kind of where there was communication over cell phone. So that has been investigated as well. Then one of the occurrences involved a suspect that was unknown to the victim. That investigation remains ongoing. And in all the other occurrences, the suspect was known to the complainant or victim. So we have we do continue to follow up with those investigations, as they are often lengthy, to ensure that we complete a thorough investigation. Property crime shows a decrease of just over 20% for July and August, despite a rise in break-in enters. There was a 200% increase in drug crime. That is from 1 incident to 3 incidents. So despite what the statistical analysis shows us, it's not a significant increase in incidents. Year to date, we're up 16.7%, which is only 1 incident greater. In relation to motor vehicle collisions, as I mentioned, we had the 2 roadway fatalities. Although our property damage collisions show an increase of 22.5%. Vehicle-related property crime shows a decrease for July and a spike for August compared to 2022. The spike in August is up to 21 from 11 incidents. So I also had some further analysis done on that, and would like to share some of that information with you as well. So the analysis looks at January 1st of this year to September 20th when the analysis was done. So since the start of May, there's been an increase in the number of stolen vehicles. At the time of this report, there were 119 vehicles reported stolen. Of the vehicles stolen, 78 were traditional motor vehicles. 41% of all vehicles reported stolen were pickup trucks. Pickup trucks traditionally are the most targeted and stolen vehicle type in Brant County. And in 47% of the occurrences, it was reported by the owner that the keys were left in the vehicle. 44% of the vehicles have been recovered. And of the vehicles recovered, 39% were recovered in the city of Brantford. There's been a significant increase in the number of stolen vehicles occurrences reported since May, and 82 of the stolen vehicles have been reported since May 1st. The highest number of stolen vehicles were reported on Mondays and Tuesdays. There continues to be a large percentage of stolen vehicles because of keys left inside the vehicle. As I said, almost 47% reported that they left their keys in the vehicle. Year to date, the highest number of occurrences per month were reported in August. And as I said, Mondays and Tuesdays being the most prolific. Mental health calls for July and August remained the same compared to last year. And 911 calls showed an increase of of close to 54% for August. Alarm calls were down for both July and August. And domestic disturbance calls increased in July by 62.5% and fell again in August. Domestics are down 1.5%. And that is my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Maybe I'm on page 17 of your report, maybe I'm missing or misunderstanding the context, because when I read the noteworthy events, there would seem to be a lot of like impaired occurrences, but then when I read the chart, I just want to make sure I'm reading it properly. So in July 23, there was 2 impaired occurrences versus 6 in July 2022. but I think you said that it was up, so I just want to make sure that I'm not reading that wrong. And then August 23 had 8, August 22 had 10, so it would look like we were down in the chart, but then when I read the noteworthy events, it seems like there was quite a few incidences that involved impaired, so I wasn't sure. I don't want anybody reading it to get the wrong message, and maybe I didn't read it properly.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. You're right. The assessment in the impaired driving related incidents, the data doesn't seem to reflect the noteworthy. I'm wondering if the numbers were July 20. Yes.
Yeah, switched. That's why I wondered if
Yes.
they were switched.
Yes, I'm wondering about that as well. I will follow up on that. Thank you, ma'am.
Because what I read in the noteworthy was that there was unfortunately, still quite a few impaired driving situations or suspected impaired and all the different things that involves. And so, I mean, anybody that's watching or listening, I wouldn't want them to read this report and think that it's decreasing when actually it would sound like there's still an issue.
No, you're right, Madam Chair. Thank you.
I know Councillor Pierce is going to have some questions. It still boggles my mind that 47% of people leave their keys of the stolen vehicles. That 47% of them were keys left in their vehicles. Like, I don't know how we break that habit. And when I talk to folks, it's like, well, you know, we live in a rural area, but times have changed, and so I don't know how we get that message out to people that you can't. How do you help yourself, protect yourself? But anyways, Mayor Bailey.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the inspector, how many of those trucks had mufflers? just asking for a friend.
Seems like there's some vehicles that miss mufflers, isn't there? Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Through you, yeah, you definitely hit on the one of the ones that I was going to talk about with our impaireds. That I seem to bring that up quite often. It's unfortunate that we're still in that. And also, as the inspector said in her report there, as far as mental health related occurrences, you know, we're way up on that, which is unfortunate. But again, I'm just thankful that we have the helps out there that we do, and hopefully that's helping. Couple questions I do have though. First, one more little statement in regards to the community service media officer with the top post. Like, that's the very first one there is one I'm going to kind of key in on with the ALPR with the fake license plate. We're almost 50-50 now in the noteworthy events with impaireds and the number of licenses or invalid license plates and that type of thing that these devices are able to pick up, which is huge. I remember when it was first spoken of that there might be one vehicle, two vehicles, but now I know they're across the board. So I don't know whose decision it was to make them across the board, but it's working. Thank you. It seems to be that's coming, you know, more often in the noteworthy events that these are getting hits and picking it up. So that's fantastic when you're given the tools that can help you do your job. So good on that. Along with the impaireds, and it's something that I'm going to touch on later with my response from council, the fact that there was a 200% increase in drug crime. That's unfortunate. I don't know if there's any sort of rationale or if it's just, you know, the season of the marijuana plants becoming croppable. That's not the word I'm looking for. Harvestable, that type of thing. I don't know if that's all part and parcel of that or not, but again, unfortunate. As far as the stats with coverage and patrol and stuff like that, we're up on a few of them there, so I'm happy with that. And there's not much else in the report that I have questions on, Madam Chair. So I appreciate the report, and as always, thanks for what you do.
Did you want to any response to Councillor Pierce?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. Yeah, the patrols, I actually was anticipating that you might ask about that, because there was one note we had motorcycle patrol last year that we didn't this year. So that was just simply one of our officers that transferred to the time team that was a motorcycle operator. So I just wanted to point out that although it doesn't show up on our data, the benefit of having the time team from our highway safety division reporting out of our location, you are still getting motorcycle patrol despite it not showing up on our data because he's not part of Brant detachment proper.
Right.
His data gets reflected elsewhere. So those resources, we still benefit from them patrolling through and around our county. So that's why the data, we could put an asterisk beside all of it because there's certainly additional patrols that are happening throughout. I'm going to be requesting from our regional analyst the data that supports our charges year to date for Big Four, so our seatbelt, speeding, distracted driving, and impaired driving. Because as of June, so it takes a little bit to pull that data, we were up as a county on all of that for our charges and our enforcement, up 17.6% for those four Big Four, as we call them, enforcements, which we know they're the contributing factor for major collisions throughout the province. So although patrols, like I said, the numbers may not be up for all of them, the enforcement is up. So when officers are tied up with enforcement, as the Chair Haley has noted in meetings past, the amount of administration that's tied up with laying charges keeps them from logging additional patrol hours. So I just wanted you to know that enforcement is certainly up. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, and that absolutely. But the one that's not key, but the one that sticks out to me on a lot of these things too is with the traffic enforcement initiative, like the number of charges that are being laid now, because that was always one of the feedbacks that I got, and it was I'm an advocate of it. Hit them in the pocketbook, and then hopefully it learns a lesson. Well, that's part and parcel right there. That that's a lot of charges within a year, and that that's got to be hopefully curving it. It doesn't appear to be sometimes, but curving it. So that's great that they're working as they are. Thank you.
On that note, and Inspector Quenneville can fill in the blanks because I'll not do this properly, but one of our traffic management unit officers was recognized recently. I should let you speak to it because you know all the details, so it's worth noting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Constable Chris Parker recently received a leadership coin for his contribution for one of the most recent provincial traffic safety initiatives. It was presented to him by the regional traffic manager to acknowledge his enforcement efforts that he and two other officers led West Region and the province in the amount of charges that they laid during one of the provincial traffic safety initiatives. So it's kind of one of those good news, bad news kind of scenarios, but certainly to acknowledge the work that Constable Parker is doing in Brant County. And he is one of your traffic management unit officers, so he is one of the enhancements for the county, certainly doing exactly what I think you intended in that position. So yes, he was recognized for that. Thank you.
I think we're happy that we have one of the top provincial enforcement folks here in Brant, so that's always good news. Councillor Pierce, were you wrapped up with your questions or comments there? Okay.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
On the mental health side of things, Inspector Quenneville, like obviously it's concerning that we're approaching last year's total amount, but we're well ahead of this time last year. And I know we just had a community safety well-being rather brief meeting, but and this is probably maybe a holistic kind of question for everybody, but I guess it speaks to the amount of resources and services that will be needed in the communities in the county for mental health. I think this is just a personal opinion, but this isn't just a policing issue, right? We need to think beyond the scope of this. And I know in the community safety wellbeing plan, there's a number of initiatives planned or projected out, but I think some of these numbers speak to the resources that are going to be needed now and in the future as the communities grow and as we get bigger. I think we're going to need more and more of these resources to help support the folks that are in need for various reasons. So this isn't going away, I guess, is my comment or my observation. Is it's not going away, and it's different things for different people, and we need to be there when they need us. Us meaning the big us, not me personally. So yeah, I see that being a larger piece of your people's time, based on the numbers that you give us. So I guess we want to make sure that you have the resources that you need available to you as well to be able to deal, apart from 38 hours of waiting in the hospital total for all the different, I know that's an issue that you're working on separately. Just the need in the community is clear. And so I think it's incumbent upon all the agencies, all the services, not just policing, to be able to come up with some kind of a response to help people. It's just a statement. I don't know that there's, I think we have to flag it, right? I think it's something that needs to be flagged. Is there any other, and social media posts, you know how I feel about the communication. I think it's wonderful that our community sees all the different things, and having PC Buchert as a second person to help PC Vitalis on that, I think has shown the reach of being able to have that, and maybe a little bit different perspective with the Special Olympics post, but also other posts that he's done as well. I think it's just really important that we show the community the breadth and depth of some of the issues that you folks are working with, and also encouraged to hear about the new school resource officer position. To have someone, I know you've told me about her background, and so to have someone in the school system that reflects the cultural diversity of our communities, I think will be key as well. Thanks to Sylvie Gagnon for all the work she's done, of course, as well. But I think that'll be a new opportunity for the OPP as well in Brant. Any other comments or questions on the Detachment Commander's report? Lots going on, as always. Okay. We will need a motion then to receive Mayor Bailey and Councillor Pierce. Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. The false alarm summary is also in your package. And Heather also prepared the report, which is separate. So the false alarm summary is item 7.2. You can see what's been called in so far this year, what's been dealt with up to August. If there's no questions, Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm just curious as to the statement there for August. Insufficient information for billing or warning letter. So does that mean that there was no fines, or I'm curious if we can elaborate on that?
I'm going to either ask Cindy or Inspector Quenville, because this is probably a relationship between the two. I don't know if anybody can shed light on that. I don't know who wants to go
Madam
first.
Chair, for the August, I know that there was some miscommunication at our end with the person that prepares that data and shares it with Heather Boyd, so that may be what that's in reference to. So it has been rectified, so that there was a time gap, I think, in terms of when this was prepared and when that data was shared.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So right now we're doing 7.2, which is the summary year to date, and all the different of what the county has billed out, not necessarily what the OPP has been called out for. So we'll need a motion to receive that for information as well. Member Verhey, seconded by Councillor Pierce. All those in favor? And that's carried. So then on 8.1, I don't know if any Cindy or if anybody wants to speak to it, but we have a report here from Heather Boyd. As you know, we started putting this report together, or she started putting this report together, which is helpful, which kind of shows the rolling numbers, so we can kind of compare and contrast. She's put some analysis in here to show that there's been a decrease in calls, and and repeat offenses, and then it shows you the amount that's been collected in fines. I don't know if there's any comments or questions on that. None? Okay. Is there anything else that we need to add to that? You're good? Okay. So we'll receive that for information then as well. 8.1 report from Heather Boyd. Anybody want to put a motion for that? To receive? Thank you, Member Verhey. Mayor Bailey seconds. All those in favor? Carried. All right, moving into communications. A couple of things in our packages here today. The first is the letter from the Ministry of the Solicitor General confirming the detachment board size and structure. If you recall, the council submitted that proposal, oh gosh, a couple of years ago now, about how we don't have to change in terms of the detachment area. Some groups do, some counties do, some zones do, but ours will stay as is, a single board. But we have been approved to add these 6 seats, so the additional community representative seats, so there'll be 2, 2, and 2. So whenever that happens, we'll then be able to have a board of 6. So they're just giving us that confirmation, which is great news that that was accepted. Anything to discuss on that? We're good. The 9.2 is a summary of the provincial offenses, income, the statements of payments. So what's been received, what's the county share. On the back is the chart that shows you the breakdown of all the different expenses, but also the revenue that came in from fines and bylaws, fines as well, and the county share of net revenue, 147,781,68, which goes to the county. Keeping all these pieces as to what comes where and what goes where and who does what is quite the learning curve. So then 9.3 is from the OPP Municipal Policing Bureau in terms of revenues that have come in on behalf of the detachment that comes into the Brant County budget. And this is done quarterly. So from April to June, there's been a transfer credit of $18,386.91, and that is from predominantly security checks, some fingerprinting and reports. So that has been transferred to the county. And then in the next memo, 9.4, it outlines that things will be changing in terms of that cost sharing. So moving forward, starting in 2025, that revenue will be, because of how they've changed police check work and how it's not done at the detachment level any longer anyways. You can read through the memo, but essentially that will be phased out starting in 2025, and then eventually by 2028 we won't see that revenue associated with those checks coming back to the county because they're not being done at the detachment level anymore as well. Something to look out for. And then 9.5, so this is I was talking, and I'll talk more about this in my chair's report, but I was speaking with David Tilley, who is our police board representative from the Solicitor's General office, and we were just talking in general about, when are the regulations coming and what is happening. So he shared this memo with me. There's some different pieces in there about the proposed Community Safety and Policing Act that, as you all know, was enacted in 2019, but we still haven't seen the regulations for it. There's some comment periods that we can do and whatnot, but what he wanted to kind of flag here in the last paragraph on the first page is the ministry is working towards the Community Safety and Policing Act in force date of April 1st, 2024. So that's 6-ish months from now. Um, there's a whole bunch of things that we may need to, it's a moving date. I'm not gonna go and buy a lottery ticket saying it's gonna be on April 1st, because we've been waiting for 4 years already. But if that is the case, then there's gonna be a lot of things that will change for us in terms of our board structure, the contracts that the county would have with the OPP. A whole bunch of things are gonna change. And we'll probably end up spending the winter getting ready for that. The board would be dissolved and then reinstated again with your new structure, a whole bunch of those things. So there's I've asked Mr. Tilley to come speak to a future board meeting. So we're flagging either October or November. He doesn't want to come in until he has a good chunk of information that he can be comfortable knowing that there's some dates to work with, and then he'll come in and give us a little bit of an overview of what's going to be required from us. But I just wanted to flag that with everybody, that that they are busy working on, and there has been a number of regulations that you can comment on the public registry. And I know that the OAPSB has circulated some of those comments as well. Most of them are like municipal policing type issues, police boards issues, but there are some OPP ones as well. Once we have more information, we'll be able to know better. But I think, rest assured, I think we're in a good position compared to other police service boards, because we don't have to amalgamate, we don't have to do anything. We're gonna still stay Brant as one board, so our work will be significantly less. But there'll be some expectations for training and policy and procedure development. So we've got some work cut out for us. If there's anything else on the communications, I don't know if there's any other additions, but that's what we have so far. We should have a motion to receive all those items, 9.1 to 9.5. Councillor Pierce, Mayor Bailey, thank you. All those in favor? Okay, other business. 10.1 and 10.2 kind of maybe go together in a way, but I'll start with 10.1 being that Inspector Quenville and myself, and well, mostly Inspector Quenville and her team, are ready to put together the Fall Dispatch newsletter together. We need to make sure that you folks are good with that, and that's why it dovetails into 10.2, because the line item we have for printing and newsletters is overspent, but overall in the budget we are underspent. So we've worked with Cindy on a work back schedule, deadlines, timelines, that kind of thing, but we can't proceed until obviously you folks are good with the process financially. We did commit to doing 2 a year. Printing costs and distribution costs are higher than they always increase, of course, so we have to take that into consideration. So I think I'll leave it at that unless I've missed something, but we can park 10.1 and maybe come back to it after Cindy reviews the budget with us, the statement of operations in 10.2, and then we can circle back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have provided year-to-date operations statement for Police Services Board for the board's knowledge. I think this is likely the first time we've provided this statement outside of the budget process, and it's certainly something that, if the board wishes, we could provide this quarterly or biannually, however you wish, just to get an idea of where the budget sits. What precipitated this was some questions just around the newsletter and where we sit with the public relations and awards line. As Chair Haley mentioned, we are over, and that is due to just costs increasing, and there were some charges in that account for it's the OAPB
The Zone 4
meeting breakfast. So that is why that is currently over. But as you can see, the training and development line, there are currently no funds spent in that account. I'm not sure what the plans are for board members, just in terms of training or conferences till the end of the year, but there could be an opportunity to utilize funds, surplus funds, in order to move forward with a newsletter there. So that's what I wanted to mention around that, and we'll turn it back over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Cindy. I don't know where things get put. Like, I did attend the OAPSB annual conference. I don't believe there's anything left for the remainder of the year to attend. So there's that 12,000. So where those registration fees fit in, I'm not sure which line item. With respect to the Zone 4 breakfast, I think in future we need to get that into the budget in a planning process, so we know that's going to happen on a, whether it's every 3 years or however we build that in. But there's no funding from Zone 4 that comes to us for that. There's no funding that comes from OAPSB that comes from that. There's no, the expectation is that the host is paying, so that the police chief side and the police service board side, we as hosts paid for everybody. If it was a municipal police force, perhaps it might be different, but it is what it is, right? So we just didn't have it budgeted. We didn't know that so next time we'll make sure that it's budgeted for and allocated for. I'm not really sure what all else is in. Well, there's the first newsletter, of course. We did the first printing, so that would be printing and distribution of the first version of the newsletter. So just looking for everybody's thoughts here. We still are under budget in terms of the overall bottom line, but obviously within line items, we would be over in that regard. So coming back to 10.1, if it's the board's wish, we'll proceed with a second edition of the newsletter, but we'd have to reallocate. I don't know what Cindy's team needs, but whether we reallocate it, the training and development line item to the public relations, so that can be, however they do that internally, we'll leave that to them. But if there's a willingness or a desire, then we'd need to consider that. Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Through you, I'm an advocate of the letter. I've always said that it's all about giving people information, right? And that's all we can do. And if the information is out there and people choose to ignore it or choose to digest it, that's on them. But at least we can say on our part, we did our part. We've given the information out there so people understand what's going on. So to me, I think that's an expense that we need to have in there. Again, I'll leave the accounting stuff to whomever, but I'm in full support of sending out that twice a year as we had discussed, for sure.
Great. Any other comments?
I would agree with Member Pierce. I think it's a beautiful production that's put out, and I think we've talked about it long enough that we really would like to have it. And I think it really puts a nice summary together of all the effort that multiple groups are putting in. So I would be a big fan of keeping it as a hard copy print piece as well. So however that works in terms of fitting it in here, I think we should continue with it.
So looking to Cindy then, do we need a motion to direct the reallocation of the funds, or a motion or anything in that regard?
Through you, Madam Chair, no motion is required. I think it's just the knowledge or awareness that we'll need to be cognizant not to spend monies in that training and development line for conferences or training, so that those funds are available for the newsletter.
Perfect. So everybody's in agreement then? We'll carry on with the next edition, and then we'll reallocate that training and development line item. And now we'll have better information to build next year's budget with some accurate costing with the newsletter costs, now that we've got a few under our belt as well. So that's great. Thank you for everybody's agreement on that. Member Verhey?
Just one quick comment about the breakfast. Is that for the Zone 4? Did that fall under memberships and subscriptions?
I believe. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's my understanding it was charged to the public relations and awards.
Oh, I see.
Account. Yeah.
Okay. But just further to that, it could be up to this group if we offer to host as well. Like, it's not a mandatory expense that we have to have in our budget.
No,
So just going forward, it is something that's, like, we don't have to host.
I'm
And
personally.
I can only speak for OAPSB, but on the chief side, if the plan is to continue to offer to host it, then great, then we need to have budget. But if not, then, and if the board doesn't want to incur that expense, then we just have to say, let's not offer to host. But just throwing that out there.
I mean, that can be a budgeting discussion when that comes up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. And as it was alluded to earlier, this isn't something that's every year either, so it's something we can plan for. But absolutely, I think I think it's behooves us to continue to host that for sure.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Like, I think I'm personally okay with being a host in the rotation. Wouldn't want to do it every year necessarily, but whatever that rotation is, I think we got a good turnout of people to that meeting, and there's opportunities to do that. I mean, catering costs are what they are. We all decided that we wanted to make sure that we had a better foot than the previous one, so that's what it is. So yeah, it was a good meeting, and I think it's just a matter of just being able to plan ahead for it, and now we know some of those costs associated with it. We can better plan. Yeah. That being said, we don't need to do it every year, like you said. Other communities can take their turns. So thank you everybody for your support on the newsletter. So that I believe, and we're lucky to be able to work with the fabulous county graphic design staff, because they turn a bunch of words into this beautiful looking thing. I think we're looking for an early November drop, like in the mailbox kind of timeline. So look for those shortly. We'll send out the draft, of course, for everybody to see before they get printed, that you'll have your chance to look at it. I know that when I shared that newsletter with a couple of colleagues at the OAPSB conference, they were envious of that communications tool and that partnership that we have, three-way partnership between the county and the Police Service Board and the OPP. So a little credit to us to be proactive in that regard. 10.3 is another, I guess another direction from you guys. We received funds, total funds of $1,939.90 from the OPP, from PC Pira, from I guess what's the right word? From it's cash received from items that have been sold off at auction, that type of thing. So the total there was the $1,939. It's been deposited. It's sitting waiting to be allocated. Apparently, we need a motion from the board. I think this is an opportunity for us to develop a policy in the future so that it's an easy thing. But we've traditionally, in the last year, put that into our reserve fund, which we have already. So we can put that in there again if that's the wishes of the board. But we apparently need a motion to direct that be put there. Did I say that right? Okay. Mayor Bailey, thank you. You put the motion forward to do that. Okay. Seconded by Member Verhey, that we put the $1,939.90 into the reserve fund. All those in favor of that? And that's carried. Okay. Moving along. Updates. Councillor Pierce, any council updates that you'd like to share?
Thanks, Madam Chair. As I said earlier there in regards to the drug activity that unfortunately is up, received, and I know, Inspector, you were copied on the email as well, but I was asked to bring it forward, received a letter from a constituent in Ward 2, which is down in the Flats area, that there seems to be some traffic of, as she calls them, drug users in the area, frequenting up on the top of the cemetery area and the parking lot there for the trail and the Tiger Cat area. Again, I know there's patrols that kind of go around, but I was just asked to bring that up at Police Services in regards to if there's any additional things that the OPP can do to try and avert that would be appreciated. And it was also knowing full well that they can't be everywhere at all the time. So, but I was just asked to bring that forward. And then the other thing I was asked to bring forward was the fact of speeding, but as I alluded to them, it was the timing was good. This was actually just the other day, just after I got the package and saw the numbers of the charges that have been laid for speeding, and I relayed that information that we are, the OPP is working hard to slow it down. It is an issue. We understand it's an issue. Through Brant Safe Streets, I know we're doing a lot there with speed humps and speed bumps and trying to slow traffic down. A lot of people don't like them, but I can personally say in the area that I live in, on Washington Street and Mile Hill, with what we've done there, it's helping for sure. Is it going to eliminate it? No, because those that are going to speed are going to do it anyway, unfortunately. But again, I appreciate what the OPP is doing to try and clamp down on that. But if there's anything extra that they could do, that's the ask.
Thank you, Councilor Pierce. I know that request that you had, that was back in the summer, obviously has been dealt with and hopefully to the citizens' satisfaction so far. I guess want to flag one of the things that Inspector Quenville and I are drafting. Well, she's drafted it. I need to finish my part. Is at the request of a few councillors, it was, how can we get that 1-800 number readily available? So we're just putting together a little bit of a communication that we'll share with council members that has the various numbers so that you can then refer constituents to call in, because we need to reinforce call it in, so we can get that captured. Because if we waited until a police service board meeting for something like that issue, we wouldn't want to see that drag on either, right? So we'll look for that coming shortly. That was something that came out of some of those discussions as well.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll turn it over to Inspector Quenville in case there's anything that she wanted to follow up on. Okay. Anything else from council?
No.
Okay.
Anything to go back?
Just the heads up that there will be the communications piece from Inspector and myself about the different numbers and the different ways to capture that information.
Perfect.
Anything, Member Verhey, for Zone 4?
Not an awful lot, unfortunately. We were to have our scheduled meeting in beginning of September there, and last minute we didn't have quorum. 2 of our members were away, and so we had to cancel the meeting, and now we're looking at booking a virtual meeting for early November. So therefore I did not attend the OACP meeting either.
Okay, thank you. I'll just run through a couple of things then on my side of things with some of the different. I mentioned earlier that last week, Inspector Quenville and I were part of Community Safety and Wellbeing committee meeting. It was a rather short meeting, and I guess I'm just flagging it with the group here. My personal, I know everybody's working hard on different things, but this is just my personal insight, is that there's potentially a better way to leverage that committee's resources and engagement. I don't begin to be the expert on it, but I just, I guess I'm just frustrated that there's so much opportunity there to use that committee. I don't know how, I don't know which way, but for the community safety, for something so important as the community safety and wellbeing plan, and staff are working very hard on all that, on those pieces. There should be a better way of being able to implement some of those things and solicit that feedback from a whole bunch of experts around the table. And maybe with the school board now being re-engaged, they'll be able to be re-engaged with the community safety wellbeing plan as well, and a number of things. But if we recall, I mean, with my hat on as a police service board, if you recall way back in 2018 and 2019, we had some presentations about the province's desire for the community safety wellbeing plan to be created was to be able to divert crisis calls, or to divert calls for service from police. Not every issue is a policing issue. So if the goal of the community safety wellbeing plan is to put supports and services in place that would divert some of those things away from policing calls so that OPP can deal with the other issues, then that to me is a metric. So how do we measure that? and at the same time, I know that staff have got a lot of great ideas on how they can do some of those things. So just, I guess, in my mind, putting the two and two together, but there's nothing to report because it was a rather short meeting. There's an evaluation. There's some different services and programs that they're proposing, and I think there's a plan to try and get everybody back together again. Hopefully, a more fulsome attendance from everybody. The golf tournament we had at the beginning, or a couple weeks ago. Gosh, everything blends. Councillor Pierce, Member Brown, myself, and Inspector Quenville were the awesome foursome, but it was a full golf tournament, a full slate of 144 golfers from different emergency services and a lot of OPP, not just our detachment, but others as well. I don't know the dollar value, but it's significant. PC Pierre did an excellent, and his team did an excellent job organizing that. All the funds raised go to the Brant Safe Beds program with the Canadian Mental Health Association, which the CMHA staff were there as well, and they were very appreciative of these funds and what it can do for the program. So, hats off to your team for another great day and another a significant amount of money that was raised to support the community. It was fun golfing. I think we should stop at 12 holes. I think that's plenty, but that's 18's a long day. Yes, Councillor Pierce.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I could just add to that, I just want to make it known on the record here that the inspector did hold our team. She was amazing golf that day, and we also saw Staff Sergeant McTaggart with a driver in his hand hitting a golf ball as well. So it was a fun day all around, and it was a great support of a much needed resource. So it was great.
I know there's plans to do it again next year. That's gotten such great reviews, so that's fantastic. Through the summer, Inspector Quenville and I have worked with the community safety groups. Just wanted to give you a quick update. You know that we had the draft terms of reference prepared, and we did share that with the two currently active and the one group that's trying to get organized. So we did share that with each of them, offered them a meeting, whether in person, Zoom, whatever. Nobody took us up on our meetings, but we did receive written feedback from some of the groups. So we're going to assemble that for you, put it together, and we'll bring it back to the next Police Service Board meeting in October for your review and consideration. Just wanted you to know that it was still moving along. Those of you that came to the barbecues in July and August at the detachment, thank you. And to Staff Sergeant McTaggart for all your organization. Those were another great series of barbecues. We really appreciated the opportunity to interact with your team, and hopefully they enjoyed it as well. I was also asked to come out to the Paris Community Safety Group meeting 2 weeks ago in their evening meeting to give a presentation on my role with the Police Service Board. They had 6-7 folks out there. I will just share that we need to maybe find them another location to meet. Out there in the detachment's not the best. Personally, and I shared this with the group, it's not conducive to attracting people to attend. They expressed concern about a number of different locations within Paris that weren't suitable for them, and I can share that with you if you'd like. But there's a lot of limitations to meeting out there, and that night was a perfect example. They were using that boardroom for debriefing, I don't know whatever it is, at a command center, and they were able to relocate within the building to accommodate the community safety group. But that, in another situation, that might not be the case, and then the community safety group is left with nowhere to go, and maybe potentially not even being able to get into the building depending on the situation. So it is something we should flag in terms of being able to support that group to find another location within Paris so that they can continue. The next meeting is being held in a community, one of the members' homes, which I don't know if that's a liability issue for the county to consider since it's your insurance, but that might be something that you want to flag as well. And we can chat more about that if you'd like. I talked to you already about David Tilley. He's our representative, our Police Service Board representative from the Solicitor General's office. He's on a standing invite for either October. He knows the dates of both October and November. He's just waiting on having enough information to be able to come in and talk to us. I have asked him for some examples of other police service boards, policies and procedures that we can use as a template, potentially as a starting point, so we're not starting from zero. So he's gonna share that with us as well. And then he'll hopefully be able to come in and talk to us about some more specific dates and in terms of timing and kind of give us an idea of like the training that may or may not be required and how it will even work, what's going to be required when the time comes. And then also Inspector talked about Crime Stoppers. Mr. Hart is also on tap for either October or November as well to come in and just give us a little bit of an update on the Crime Stoppers program and if there's anything that we can or could do to support them as well. And I think that should be it for now. That's enough. I know we have an in-camera. Any questions on any of my updates so far? All right. I know we do have an in-camera discussion, so I don't want to drag on too long with all the stuff that I'm talking about. But if there's any questions, let me know. So we do have an in-camera discussion today. So we will need to go, motion to go in camera, please. Mayor Bailey, thank you. Councillor Pierce, yep, thank you. Seconded, all in favor to go in camera? That's carried. Are we good? So we are back here in open session to essentially wrap up. Do we need anything else for your notes or anything? We're good? Okay. Our next meeting is Tuesday, October 24th here at 9 a.m. And then, of course, in November again. We don't have anything currently planned for December given the later schedule that we've adopted, but if we need something, we can always schedule an ad hoc meeting if needed. So if there's nothing else for today, then wow, it's still only 10 to 11, so that's good. So we'll adjourn this meeting today. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good day.